Welcome back! I'm one of the developers working on Dwarf. It's a 2D tower defense dungeon crawler RPG. It's a cool mashup of genres, and I'd really appreciate it if you wishlist it on Steam. So the first piece of art I'm going to be critiquing was sent to me by Mia. It's already pretty darn good, so we're going to see if we can improve this. I love that you added a highlight on this corner, so check it out. If I remove that highlight, it's still fine, but adding a highlight on the edges where corners are, it really emphasizes it and it makes it look pretty darn good. You've done that with the door and in other places as well. So in regards to the door and this glass, something really simple that I think we could do to improve it is I'm going to grab white, and what I'm going to do is I think we can, there's this tool, there it is. It's called the polygon tool. With the polygon tool, what I can do is I can drag this and create a shape, which to me will look like I totally messed that shape up. I can create a shape that'll look like glares in the window. So I think that this is something that your art is missing right now. There's just a couple of glares here in the window. And the reason why I'm doing this with all white is and on a separate layer is because we'll be able to edit it really easily. So now I can take the snipping tool and I can cut it around the edges. It's easier than erasing it. And let's go up here too. I think this one right there. And now check it out. When we double click the layer, we can lower the opacity. And there you go, you have some glares. Of course, these aren't the coolest glares ever, but you guys get the general idea. What I usually like to do for glares is I like to have a very, very thick one and then a couple of thin ones around it. This one could be even thinner. And it's okay if the glare doesn't go all the way across, if you have it sort of like fade away like I'm doing here. Actually, erasing it a little bit might be even better. And then adding those glares in the window would also be great. So I see that you have a handle here, but the handle doesn't really have enough emphasis on it. I would probably use some of this shading to also shade right here under the... Wait, am I on the wrong layer? What's going on? There we go. So I would also add some of that shading under the handle here, and it'll make it look like the handle's protruding. So the longer this shadow is, the more it'll look like the handle is sticking out. So let me see. I'll probably put that there, and maybe something like that. Have a bit of a fade. And now if you look at it, it looks like the handle is actually sticking out, and it gives more emphasis to the handle. And then if this is metal, something really easy that you can do to make things look metallic is add a highlight to it. So I'm going to get white, and I'm just going to do 2 dots right here. And now look, there looks like there's a glare in that metal handle, right? It looks pretty cool. You could probably also do it down here, but I don't think we want emphasis here. That looks like where you insert mail. I don't know if that's what it is, but that's what it looks like. Another thing that I would do to emphasize that the handles here is I would add some hinges. So for hinges, I would probably just go with white. I mean, maybe if you want to have the same color consistency, it might look good to do a yellow. But I would add hinges on one of the sides of the door. It's a really simple detail that you have plenty of pixel density here to add in. These pots here look really great, but something that I would do to make the bushes look like they're standing out more is I would shade underneath these. So I'm just going to do a new layer. I'm going to go to black, and I'm going to draw a quick line right here under the plant. Boom, 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 boom. And now if I zoom out, maybe even there. Now if I zoom out, let's lower the opacity there. And now that there's a shadow underneath those, it does make them look like they're sticking out more. Kind of the same technique as I did earlier. I see that you did it right here with the shadow underneath the man, what are these things called? I don't know what these things are called. But you did a shadow underneath. However, that shadow's not dark enough. I'd go darker, because if we look at the preview, you can barely see it. So I'd make this shadow darker, and what we can do is, oops, let me turn on contiguous. And what we can do is we can actually have a gradient. So that way we still have this color. There, so I added a shadow at the top, and it doesn't really look like it's blending here too well. So I would maybe go halfway on the opacity and just drag that across, just so that it looks like there's a bit better of a gradient. We can also add the shadow under here as well. All right, and now look at just making those shadows darker does make that pop a little bit more. I like the grass down here. It's pretty good. Something that I often do is when you have a door like this, it's okay to have an indent. So for example, this grass, it could actually go in like this, because the door is actually not going to be completely even with the house. It's usually indented a tiny bit in, if you know what I mean. So doing something like that is also fine. I would maybe even remove that dark green near the bottom, as so. And then with these grass blades, they look a little bit odd to me because it looks like you have two grass blades that are touching. Here's what I mean. If you did a grass blade, that looks like a grass blade, right? And then if you had another grass blade, maybe a smaller one, you would do something like this. One over here. But by you making them both bend the same way, it kind of just looks like they're touching. I know that's probably not what you did, what you were trying to do, but I wouldn't make them touch. So if we're doing grass blades like this, I would make this one bend left, and then I would make that one just go up, and I would get rid of the thing in between them. So now it looks like two grass blades instead of this. I'm not sure if this is supposed to be one grass blade or whether it's two grass blades that just end up touching at the top. It looks like you did it all over here. So I think that you were just drawing these really big fat grass blades. I think that looks a little bit unnatural. I wouldn't really do grass blades that are that big and chunky. And if you do though, if you do grass blades that are this big and chunky, color in this part right here. And maybe they don't need to be that chunky, so we can still make them chunky by making them this wide. You see what I did here? But they're not 3 wide. I think this is way too wide for a grass blade. This video is sponsored by Skillshare. It's an online learning community with tons of cool creative projects for you to get involved in. And check it out. The program that I use is Sprite, and as you would have guessed it, they have a ton of Sprite tutorials, and these are pretty awesome tutorials, honestly. I'm a Unity 2D game developer, and I found an ultimate guide to C# Unity 2D programming. This is perfect for people who can do pixel art and want to start making games. Skillshare is less than $10 a month with an annual subscription, and the first 1,000 people to use the link in my description will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. The rocks look pretty good, but they look very, very smooth. If that's your goal, then you did a good job and they look great. But what I would probably do is I would find a color in between. I'm going to use this blue, and I would actually give them a little bit more form. So I would add things like this, just so that they don't seem so round or so flat. Add a little bit of, just near the bottom, add a little bit of shape to them. You see how that's making them look more natural, those shadings there? Alright, I think that's all I'm going to critique in this piece of artwork, or else I'd be getting extremely picky because it is gorgeous. Let's move on to the next one. Alejandro Mango sent me some barrels to use in a critique video. This is excellent. And check it out. He sent it to me big. If you want to send me art, make sure you also send the original file size as a PNG. It will look blurry like this, but when I copy paste it into Sprite, it'll be fine. DM me on Twitter if you want to be in the next pixel art critique video.
Oh yeah.
So these browns, they're too similar and you can't see the contrast here. So what I would do is I would make this brown right here a little bit brighter. So let's go ahead and try that. If you have contiguous on, if you turn it off, it'll update that color everywhere in the canvas, and that's what we want. Now you can clearly see the contrast, and it'll be much easier to tell these, to see these texture lines that you were adding for the wood. Now, a lot of barrels are made out of planks, so I would probably do something like this, you know what I mean? So that you can clearly see the planks. This is a little too thin for the planks. They would probably be a little bit thicker. But I'm just gonna leave the texture that you have because it looks okay. It still looks like wood. But something that definitely needs fixing is this upper part right here. So I see that you have this very dark color for an outline, and the shape of it isn't too bad, but it does look like it bends in a little too soon. Okay, so for the top here, I'm just gonna make it a solid color for now. Let's fill this all in. We gotta start from scratch. It was hard to tell what you were doing up there. Alright, so here we go. We got the top of our barrel. Now's a good time to use the symmetry tool, so I'm just gonna put that right in. Let me see if I got it right. Yep. By the way, the pixel art program I'm using is called Sprite. There's a link in the description below. Please use that link if you're gonna buy it, because they get a tiny little kickback. I'm not sponsored by them. Oh my god, fail. Okay, so we got the top of the barrel here. You see the shape of this right here, the metal ring? Let's copy that shape for the top as well. So it has the same sort of curvature. Now with the metal ring, since it is on the total outside of the barrel, you actually don't have to hide it with the outline. Like it can go all the way to the edge. That's fine. But of course I would make it darker. But the point is that the outline can have color in it. You see that? Now it looks more like it's going all the way around the barrel. It doesn't look like it doesn't look like it stops. So the top of the barrel usually has an indent. And I'm just going to go to alpha here. That's how I like to get in between colors. I'm going to shade the top right here. Now it looks like there's an indent, right? But you need also another part right around here. So what I like to do is I like to color in the center, and now we can see that there's sort of like a hole there. The round shape doesn't quite fit. I think we need to match it on both sides. There. Now the round shape looks a little bit better because the top part and the bottom part matches a little bit better. But anyway, so here we got the edge, and now we're going to go a little bit darker and shade this part. So that way it looks like it's indented in. You see what I mean? It looks like there's an indent there. And a very simple thing that you could do, I'm actually going to make it even darker. And a very simple thing that you could do is now just add a couple lines, and now it looks like there's pieces of wood at the top. And there you go, you have a really simple top to this barrel. So I do like to make the top of my outlines a little bit lighter. So I'm going to go ahead, and the top of this barrel, I'm going to make it lighter, and that kind of just gives it lighting. It almost looks like the outline is also affected by lighting, and I think that gives a lot more form to shapes. So let me do this, and there we go. Now we have the top of the barrel.
Oh yeah.
I do think that probably we need to move this up and basically duplicate everything here, just so that it looks rounder. Okay, so there we go. I lifted the top a little bit, and it looks a lot more rounder. I would probably also make this glare a little bit brighter, or just add a brighter aspect to it like this. And the barrel should also have shading. The shading here is way too harsh, so I'm going to find it somewhat of an in-between color. That's there we go. That one's pretty good. And I'm gonna add this. I'm gonna make it twice as thick as the one near the edge. And now that the barrel has shading on the sides, it's gonna look a lot rounder. You can even add a highlight in the center. So there can be a piece in the center that is brighter. It would make sense for it to also be where the glare is. So somewhere over here, the barrel should be brighter, and now it looks a lot rounder. The contrast here probably needs to increase, but you get the idea. A few small things that you could also do is, if you really wanted to make this look indented, we could have a shadow here as well. The bigger this shadow, the more indented it would look. And then we can also have a highlight on the edge of the barrel, and you could probably put the highlight in a couple places. It's fine if you have the highlight in a couple places. It just means there's more than one light source. So a highlight right there would look pretty good because it matches with the light source that would also be creating the shine on these metal rings. All right, I think this is improved enough. Let's go to the next one. So Ninja Panda sent this character, and the thing he wanted help with is that he's been restricting the amount of colors he uses in his artwork, and then he decided not to, since he realized that I don't do it either, and there's not much of a reason to do it. But he doesn't want his artwork to look too messy, so he kind of wants me to go over when to restrict the amount of colors you use and why you should add colors to your artwork or take them away. I think I'm going to make the canvas size a little bit bigger real quick. The cool thing about a Sprite is how fun it is to increase the canvas size, because you can easily move these outer lines to make it exactly the extra size that you want. There's a link in the description for a Sprite. So with a character like this, I like to make the eyes very obvious. An easy way to do that is to use the color yellow, or to use the color white. Since this guy looks like the main character or a good guy, I'm just gonna go with white. And now here's a perfect example of when and when not to use extra colors. It looks like you put a red here because you wanted it brighter because it's taking in lighting, right? So it's near the top, and that's why you should take in more lighting. But then why is this color darker? The shading here kind of doesn't make sense. If we wanted to make it brighter because it's taken in more light, then I would make the entire part brighter, just like that. And I also noticed that you have doubles. So doubles is when you have pixels stack on top of each other. If you use a Sprite, it has this feature called Pixel Perfect. And let me show you what Pixel Perfect does. If I draw a line, it never lets the pixels stack. But if I turn pixel perfect off, now the pixels can stack on top of each other. Some artists like to have pixel perfect on. Some people like to have it off. I love to have pixel perfect on. So I'm just removing some of the extra pixels that you have here, and it's actually going to let us give these horns a better shape, I think. All right, so that looked pretty good. Maybe remove these here, and if you want the head to be taller, I would probably add red here. So it depends on how you want the character to look. I'll just do this shape for now. And then it looks like you want it to shade, but you have two colors here for shading, and they're very similar. If the colors are near each other, you don't need two colors. It just makes things more complicated. And up here now there's three colors, and usually if you have a gradient, you shouldn't have three colors next to each other. If you have like 3 or 4 colors in one spot where you're trying to shade, you're probably using too many. So for example, it should have a transition like this. So near the bottom here, we have the darkest color, and then you can see it gets brighter. So a transition like this is better than kind of having, so just in this one little spot, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different reds. That's too many, and it starts to look a little bit messy, and I can't really tell where the lighting is coming from. So for example, on this arm, the lighting would probably come from the right side. So what we would want to do is we would want to fade from one color to the other. You see how I faded there? And that'll make the lighting look a little bit better. With the feet here, you also added this dark red, but we should stay consistent with the outline. If you wanted to make the outline brighter, a spot that I would do it at is the horns up here, which I see that you did, which is great. But you can barely tell that those horns are brighter. So I'm going to actually make them even brighter. I'm going to do this. There we go, something like this. Now definitely made that look like it's taking in more light. I think the shading on your character, the contrast is way too high. There's 4 colors here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's too many. If I put these colors next to each other, you can see that they would be probably used in the same spot, right? So if I put this color here, it's like, might as well, you didn't need to make a new color for this piece of shading. I replaced that color everywhere in the canvas because I don't think you needed that many colors. And actually, let's make that shading just a little bit more gradual. With the arm here, it looks like it's missing an outline here. You want it to be detached from the body, but it looks like you detached it. You stopped the outline for it way too soon. So maybe something like this would be a little bit better. I'm not sure why there's red here. I'm going to take that red out. For the shading in the arm here, it looks like you picked one little spot to add in the light. But what you would actually want to do is you'd want to have the entire shoulder be brighter. What I mean by that is, let me take this out. I'm just getting rid of some of those doubles that you had. Is I would have the brightest part be the shoulder, right? Because that's what's facing the sun, right? The top of the shoulder. The arm here, you almost can't see it. You have these little highlights which are really bright, but this part is way too dark. It almost looks like the outline. So what I would do is I would definitely brighten up this color right here, at least in the arm. So let's just go ahead and color that whole arm, and now you can see it's much more obvious where that arm is. And we can still go in and add a highlight, but the highlight should probably be closer to, the outsides of the hands, or just color in the entire hand, and it'll make it more obvious where the hand is. And the hands usually would have more light than the legs. So for example, this color right here that's used for a highlight, if it doesn't appear in the legs, that's fine. The legs don't get as much light as the hands do. So I'm just going over some of your highlights here. I'm going to make this shoulder also look a lot more similar to the one on the other side. And boom, now you can see the shape a lot better, right? There we go. Now it actually looks like there's 2 arms and a chest. I really made this chest highlight big and obvious. I didn't connect this all the way up because it would start looking like it's literally not connected to the torso. And I only kept the highlights where they needed to be. So it's not about how many colors you have, it's about what the purpose of those colors is. So for example, if I colored all the highlights, you can still tell the form. The chest is sticking out, that's why it has a highlight. The shoulders are pointing towards the sun, that's why they have a highlight. And then I highlighted the hands. You don't have to highlight the hands, but I think it's a nice touch to highlight the hands because it makes them more obvious.
I'll see you guys next week, Dev Live.